What's going on, guys? Junior's Fishing Company with another minnow jig today. Now, you know by now I love just mimicking natural forage and stuff like that. A lot of the patterns I tie are either natural colors or shapes or whatever. I wanted something that was really, really flashy. Kind of like if you've ever used like a silver daredevil in the summer where the water's clear and the sun's out. Those things just are so bright and flashy. Now, some of the waters I fish in are a little bit more stained, and we don't have a ton of snow cover on the ice right now, so that light penetrates down pretty good. And I was thinking of something I could tie that was a really shiny, shimmery bait. And so what I kind of ended up on, so I've got this hook right here. This is a 1/8 ounce, just a traditional kind of lead head 1/8 ounce 90-degree jig. It was a round ball jig, but I flattened it just for my eyes because I'm gonna put my eyes up here. And then I ended up just dipping, or not dipping, this is a chrome colored kind of like a powder paint. You know, you just heat up your jig and dip it in there, and then you just got to make sure and clean out your eye. I'm just gonna maybe add a little bit. I didn't put any of that lead free or lead wire down, so I'm just gonna build up a little bit. I'm not gonna spend 20 minutes doing this. This is a 140 UTC in gray brown. It's just a really nice, I really don't see the brown in it, but it's a really like a soft gray. So what I'm gonna do for the flash of this, I've got this Ripple ice fiber in hologram silver, and I just absolutely love it. This is some of the flashiest stuff I've come across. It is just awesome. Now, I wanna dull this down just a little bit, and so I'm gonna do a dubbing loop with this, and then just a little bit of fly fish food bruiser blend. You could use Senyos too. They're pretty much, they're not the same material, but the length of fiber is what I'm more concerned with. They're pretty much the exact same length, so it really doesn't matter which one you use. This bait will probably be, I don't know, for sure between like 2 and 3 inches probably. I'm really not too concerned with how long this bait's gonna be. I just kind of eyeballed a lot of this. If it's 3 3¼ that just gives me a little bit of a bigger bait. If it's less, anything between really 2¼ and 3½, in my opinion, in winter fishing, is pretty sufficient for walleyes. Now this Ripple ice fiber is a little bit long, so I cut it in half and I just put it into these loon tweezers. And so I'm gonna kind of get it. It's really hard to judge how much of this stuff you're gonna want to put into your dubbing loop, because too much, it doesn't really add a ton of body. This actually folds down pretty nicely, so I'm just gonna put it in like that. Again, I'm not cutting it to taper or anything like that. I'm just putting this in there. This is just to kind of create my body, and I'm gonna lose a lot of fibers when I'm doing this, because when you cut this, it just does not want to stay in there. They just flop everywhere. It's kind of like tinsel where you're cutting this stuff and some of it just kind of crumbles out of your hand. So I'm going to get that spun up really well, and then I'll just kind of grab a bodkin or something like that, and I'm just going to pick out the ones that are trapped. And some of them are going to fall out, which is fine. But really, even this much flash, it probably looks like a lot more than it really is on the camera. It's really not a ton. And when this stuff gets wet, it's going to all stick together. And so you kind of want to err on the side of thinking it's too much. So I'm just going to get my fingers wet, and I'm going to just kind of push this stuff back. And it actually behaves pretty well for a synthetic. It kind of bends back really nice. It's really easy to fold this stuff. So that's kind of one of the surprises I had. The first one I made of these, this is only the second one, but the first one I made, I was kind of in shock about how easy it was to fold that stuff back. So I'll just get this. I'm just gonna start doing wraps. I don't know, you can kind of see I'm probably 2/3 of the way down on my shank. And I'm not gonna do crazy tight wraps because I'm gonna wrap this all the way up to the top. If anything, I'll start with more open wraps and I'll kind of get tighter as I go, because I do kind of have a lot of shank to cover and not a ton of materials. But I should have got my bobbin out of the way. Maybe I will super quick, so I'm just gonna get that out of the way. And just watch your hook when you're wrapping this. And this stuff is just gonna add some flash. And I just wanna cover it a little bit with some of that dubbing. And the fly fish food, I think I might prefer the fly fish food bruiser blend over Senyo's. The fly fish food is a little bit softer, and I think it kind of mats down a little bit better. The Senyo's is a little more coarse. But watch, someone's going to say they're the identical same material. So I'm going to just kind of get my thread out of the way. It's just starting to spin a little bit. Just keep folding that back and wrapping it. And it's starting to dry out, so it's starting to get all frizzy. I'll just work my way right up here, and I'm going to put all of this on. So I'm just going to wrap right here until I run out of stuff, because I do want all of this on there. Maybe 2 more turns or so. Just want to get all that flash on there. And that should be good. Get that folded back. Grab my thread. And again, I can just really kind of pinch that. And it just stays back real nice. And I'll move my cradle out of the way. And get that tied down. And you can already kind of see, maybe not, that it doesn't add, it's not super bulky. There's a lot of air that's in these, not in the actual material, but there's plenty of, this is pretty thin. When we get it wet, we'll kind of see. So I'll get all that pushed back. I just want a little space for the dubbing I'm going to put down. So what I'm going to do, it's going to fish like this. And I want the hook point side to be really thin, so the stack of dubbing I have for that is a lot thinner than what I'm going to put on the bottom. But really, all in all, it is not going to be a lot of dubbing on either side. So I'm going to get right up by my bead, and I'm going to do this top one first. And I'm going to kind of put it in a little bit longer in the back than in the front. You can kind of see, I don't know how much you can see of that, but you can see that this one is a little bit longer than that, because the shorter that this side is, kind of the bigger the head you'll have. And I want to build up a lot just to get there. So I'll just get right by my bead, make sure my thread is corded up, and I can, if I want, I can spread this out a bunch. But really, I do want some of that flash to show through. So I'm going to stay up by my bead as much as I can. And I can just comb this out just a little bit, just to get it kind of spread out. Just enough. I don't need the sides super covered, but just enough where it'll have some material on there. And then I can just do the top, and then I can come over here and do the top of my bait, make sure that this is going to be the same length relatively than that. And I can come right here, try and move all my stuff out of the way, just get my thread right there, right by my bead. I've got some flash that isn't behaving very well. but that's alright, shouldn't really matter. I'll get that pushed down, hold it, because it's going to want to roll on you. I'm just going to get a couple tight wraps on there. And I'm going to comb this out, same as I did before. You'll lose a lot of this material, but that's alright. And I'm going to spread this all around. Again, I just want to make sure that I'm getting some on the sides, but I'm not worried about too much getting there. I'm going to trim off this flash. It's kind of getting in my way. Trim this one off too. So now I'm going to fold this back and I'm going to go right by my bead. I'm not really going to wrap over any of this material because I'm not putting eyes on here, so you can see how nice and small that collar is going to be. If I were to wrap, I'll just try and do it. If I were to wrap over it like this, that'd be fine if I was putting eyes down, but I don't want to do that because I am not putting eyes here. I just want a little bit of a collar, so I'm going to whip finish off now. I could build up that a little bit to try and even it out with my head, but that would take a lot of thread, and the more thread you're going to add by this lead head, it's just going to push back into the bait a little bit, and I really don't want that. So I'll just trim off my thread. Now I'm comb this out. Just comb with a bigger comb first. I don't want to push all that material out, and this is when it really starts to look a little bit ugly. That's alright. So you do lose quite a bit of stuff, especially if you're like me and you're probably not tying it in properly. And you can see I might end up trimming some of these really long fibers, but don't do that until you get it wet. Don't trim a ton until you've seen what this bait's going to look like. And before I do anything with the body, I'm going to put my eyes on. So because this head is a little bit bigger, if this was a tungsten 1/8 ounce, it would be a lot smaller. I would use a smaller eye, but I want an eye that's going to cover up most of this head. So I've got 6mm living eyes in ice. I easily use more ice than anything, but I do like the other ones too. So I'm just going to put a little super glue on there. You don't want to put too much because when you push on this, it's going to squish right onto your lead head in all sides, and then it's going to really stick out. So you want to be careful. I just had to get some off of there, and then just wipe it on your pants, ruin your pants. I'm just going to make sure that that's as straight as I can get it. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know, and they're going to end up falling off anyway. So I'm going to grab my other one. But this paint is pretty tough, this powdered paint. I didn't dip it in head cement or anything, just because it doesn't add a ton of durability when you have this powder paint stuff. That's already pretty good. When this stuff cracks though, it's pretty much done. If you have like a, you know, the liquid paints, or I don't know, they're not acrylic, but whatever other paints there are, they peel instead of crack, and so you can usually get away with using those a little bit longer. So you just want them to be as even as you can get them. And now I'm going to let this dry for a second, and I'm going to get this wet, and we'll kind of see what we need to trim. So now I can really just kind of dip this bait, and I might have to end up trimming a little and maybe even combing. I gotta put some more water in this thing. Just a little bit more. You can kind of see it'll get a little caught on your hook. You might have to move some materials onto one side or the other because this dubbing wants to just sit straight, but if it's wrapped around that hook a little bit, then it just makes it a little bit tougher to sit flat. So I'll just kind of put this back in here, and you can see that this is really long, And so I'm gonna kind of just grab a ruler, and I can see, so this would be, if I left all of it in, it'd be sitting at about 3.5, which isn't too bad. I'm gonna kind of just trim off one at a time, because there's only a couple of these flashes back here. And I just want to make sure you can still see there's a little bit of a taper at the end. Just want to try and leave a little bit of a taper in there. And so what I wanted to try and do, you can still kind of see this bottom's a little bit thicker, but the top has all that flash that you can see through. My lights aren't super bright right now, so you're not gonna see it, but when that sun is out and you're jigging this in some clear water, this flash is just gonna be all over the place. So there you have it, a nice little 3-inch shad minnow, super bright, flashy. This thing will attract fish from a long ways away, but even in stained water, this is gonna add a lot of light reflecting flash to help bring those fish in, even if they can't hardly even see. You know, if you're fishing in 1.5 feet of water clarity, you need all the advantage you can get. And just 2 materials. Keep it simple. You can make a bait as complicated as you want, or you can simple it down to just 2 different materials, sometimes even 1. So with something like this, you can pump these out a little bit quicker. The dubbing loop, it takes a little bit more time, but I really, really like this. Junior's Fishing Company. Like and subscribe. See you in the next one.